The doorbell rang at precisely 2:45 p.m. on a rainy Thursday afternoon, exactly 6 months after I buried my husband of 42 years. I was in the kitchen arranging the lilies David had always brought home every anniversary, trying to pretend that the silence in our house wasn't swallowing me whole, even though his absence had carved out a space nothing could fill. When I opened the door, a polished woman in a navy suit stood there, holding a slim leather folder and wearing that calm, practiced expression lawyers seem to master early in their careers. "Mrs. Harrington, my name is Margaret Whitmore from Whitmore Legal Associates. I have some highly unusual instructions from your late husband that I was required to deliver exactly 6 months after his passing." My stomach dropped. David had loved surprises throughout our marriage, little gestures that kept things alive between us, but something delivered by a lawyer after his death felt different, heavier. "Instructions, Miss Whitmore? David's will was read months ago. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary." "Mrs. Harrington, this is entirely separate from the probate process. May I come inside? What I have to discuss is quite personal and rather extraordinary." I let her in, watching how she took in our comfortable but unremarkable home with the quiet assessment of someone used to measuring worth. David and I had lived well enough, never extravagantly. He had spent his career as a rare book stealer, traveling to auctions and estates, while I had taught literature at the community college for decades. "Mrs. Harrington, your husband approached our firm in 1983 with precise directions concerning a bequest that could only be released after exactly 42 years of marriage." 1983? That was over 4 decades ago. What kind of gift waits that long? "The kind that requires proof of a lifetime together, Mrs. Harrington. Your husband was very particular about the timing." A memory surfaced then, one I'd tucked away years ago. I was 26 again, sitting on the floor of our first tiny apartment, laughing with David over cheap wine. "If you can put up with me for 42 years, he'd said, with that crooked smile I fell for instantly, "I'll give you something you could never dream of." I'd teased him, told him 42 years sounded impossible when we'd barely managed one. We never spoke of it again. I'd assumed he'd forgotten. "Miss Whitmore, are you saying David actually remembered some silly promise we made when we were practically kids?" "Mrs. Harrington, your husband never forgot anything that truly mattered to him, and this promise clearly mattered deeply." If my story has already pulled at your heart, if you've ever wondered what secrets love can hide for decades, subscribe to the channel and stay with me. There are more stories like mine waiting, stories of ordinary women discovering extraordinary truths. Miss Whitmore opened her folder and placed 3 items on the coffee table: an ornate silver key that looked centuries old, a sealed envelope in David's familiar handwriting, and a smaller envelope containing an address. "Your husband stipulated that if your marriage reached exactly 42 years, which it did, lasting until 11 days before his passing, these would be delivered to you with one clear directive: handle everything alone. Do not involve your daughters in what you discover." Not involve Claire and Sophie? That felt wrong. We've always been close. "Mrs. Harrington, I'm only following his explicit wishes. He was adamant on this point." After she left, I sat in David's old leather chair, turning the heavy key over in my hands, staring at the envelope with my name on it. 42 years had taught me David could be romantic in unexpected ways, but this felt bigger, almost sacred. I opened the letter with shaking fingers. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, we've made it. 42 years together, just like we promised in that cramped apartment all those years ago. It also means I'm gone, and I can't be there to watch your face when you finally see what I've been preparing since the beginning. Do you remember laughing at me when I said I'd give you the impossible if you stayed? Eleanor, I meant it. Every word. The address will take you to a place I've built for your future, a future I wanted to share, but one you may now walk alone. Go to Ireland by yourself. Do not tell Claire or Sophie about this letter or what you find. Their love for you is real, I know that, but their interest in what I've created might be something else entirely. Use the key. step inside the manor and remember you have always been my lady, even when life made you feel ordinary. All my love, forever, David. I read it twice more before opening the second envelope. Ashford Manor, County Kerry, Ireland. A manor? We had never owned property abroad, never had the kind of money that bought Irish estates. Yet the key was real, solid, engraved with delicate shamrock patterns and tiny emeralds set into the bow. The handwriting was undeniably David's. The address checked out when I searched online that evening. Ashford Manor was a restored 17th-century estate in the wild beauty of Kerry, privately owned, closed to the public, surrounded by gardens and ancient woodlands. That night, lying in our bed alone, I made a decision that would have seemed insane that morning. I was going to Ireland. I would follow David's instructions and keep it secret from our daughters. Some promises outlive the people who make them. The flight to Dublin was long, and the drive south to Kerry felt longer. At 70 years old, I'd never traveled internationally alone. I'd never done anything this impulsive. But something in David's words pulled me forward, a certainty that he had spent decades planning something monumental. I'd told Claire and Sophie I was taking a quiet trip to process my grief. "Mom, are you sure traveling alone is wise right now?" Claire had asked, worry thick in her voice. "Maybe one of us should come with you." I'd brushed it off with talk of needing space, of wanting to explore routes I'd never pursued. They accepted it, though I could hear the doubt. The roads narrowed as I entered Kerry, green hills rising into dramatic mountains, the Atlantic glinting in the distance. Ashford Manor appeared suddenly, framed by stone walls and towering oaks. It took my breath away. 3 stories of pale limestone, tall windows reflecting the sky, 4 rounded towers, gardens spilling down toward a lake that caught the light like a mirror. It wasn't just a house, it was a domain. The silver key fit perfectly into the massive oak doors, carved with Celtic knots matching those on the key itself. The doors swung open silently. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Harrington. We've been awaiting your arrival." I turned to see an older man in formal attire standing in the grand entrance hall. "You were expecting me? How?" "Mrs. Harrington, I am Donovan, head butler of Ashford Manor. Mr. Harrington left detailed instructions regarding your eventual coming and every comfort you might require." "How long have you worked here?" 17 years, madam. The entire staff has been preparing for this moment." The hall was breathtaking. Marble floors, tapestries glowing in soft light, a sweeping staircase leading to a gallery above. "Donovan, I don't understand any of this. David never mentioned owning property in Ireland, never mentioned staff, never mentioned anything." "Madam, perhaps you'd like to settle in your rooms first. Mr. Harrington left a letter to be given once you were rested." He led me through corridors lined with portraits and antique furniture, past rooms that felt like museum galleries. My suite was palatial, a sitting room with a stone hearth, a bedroom with a canopied bed draped in silk, a bathroom blending old stone with modern luxury, and a small study filled with books. "When you're ready, ring the bell. I'll bring the letter." Alone at last, I stood at the window overlooking terraced gardens, a greenhouse complex, stables in the distance. This wasn't a vacation home, this was an estate, meticulously restored, alive with care. But how had David, a bookseller with modest success, afforded it? Why the secrecy? I rang the bell. Donovan returned with tea and a thick envelope sealed with green wax, bearing a crest I didn't recognize. "Madam, your husband wished you to read this privately. Before I do, how long have you known David?" "I met Mr. Harrington 18 years ago when he purchased Ashford Manor. I served the previous owners and remained with the estate." 18 years ago, 2007. That was when I thought his longer trips were for rare book auctions in Europe. Apparently, they included buying Irish manors. Did he ever explain why he kept this from his family? "He said it was to be a gift for you, madam, revealed only under the right circumstances. The surprise would mean more if discovered this way." After Donovan withdrew, I opened the letter. "My beloved Eleanor, if you're reading this inside Ashford Manor, you've taken the bravest step of your life. Everything here, the manor, the grounds, the staff, the collections, belongs to you now. I bought this place 18 years ago and spent every moment since preparing it for you. I hoped we'd enjoy it together in retirement, but fate decided otherwise. To understand why this particular manor, why the decades of secrecy, you need to know what I found 26 years ago that changed everything. In 1999, while researching a private library in Kerry for a client, I stumbled upon something scholars had sought for centuries: the lost library and relics of the O'Connell chieftains, hidden after the Cromwellian Wars in 1652. Manuscripts, illuminated books, gold torques, silver chalices, priceless artifacts of Gaelic Ireland. The cave system where they were concealed had remained undisturbed for over 350 years. Professional appraisal placed the collection's value at conservatively €450 million. I paused, tea growing cold. €450 million? David had discovered a lost Celtic treasure and never told me? Eleanor, I know you're wondering why I kept silent. Sudden wealth changes people. Families fracture over money they never earned. Children begin to see parents differently. I watched it happen to others. More than that, I wanted you protected. If something happened to me, I needed you secure, treated with the respect you deserved, not managed or influenced by expectations. I chose Ashford Manor because it felt like the setting you were born for: elegant, timeless, surrounded by beauty. I've turned part of it into a private museum for the O'Connell collection. Tomorrow, Donovan will show you the vault. You now hold wealth beyond imagining and the freedom to live as you choose. My darling Eleanor, you married a bookseller and woke up guardian of an ancient Irish legacy. Welcome home. All my love, David. I sat motionless, looking out at gardens that were apparently mine, in a manor that was apparently mine, built on a treasure hidden since the 17th century. Some husbands left pensions. Mine had made me custodian of Ireland's lost golden age. That night sleep barely came. I kept walking to the window to confirm the moonlit grounds were real. By morning I wanted proof, tangible evidence of David's claims. Donovan appeared at 9 with breakfast. Madam, are you ready to visit the historical collection? First, the legal side. If these artifacts belong to Irish heritage, aren't there laws? Mr. Harrington was meticulous, madam. The discovery was on land he purchased for research. He worked with the National Museum and government authorities to establish clear title. Several pieces were donated, substantial funding given to preservation efforts. In exchange, private custody was permitted with provisions for scholarly access. We descended a restored stone staircase to a heavy door. Climate control, security, conservation, all museum standard. The vault opened into galleries of breathtaking beauty. Illuminated manuscripts glowed under soft lights. Gold torques and arm rings shimmered. Silver chalices reflected centuries of history. This Book of Kells-style gospel book dates to the 9th century, Donovan explained quietly. Mr. Harrington believed it rivaled anything in Trinity College. I moved slowly, reading David's careful placards, his handwriting describing provenance, cultural context, artistic significance. In the final chamber stood a reconstructed chieftain's hall with an actual high seat carved from ancient oak. Mr. Harrington hoped you'd use this space for special gatherings, Donovan said. He felt you deserved to sit where leaders once sat. David wanted me to sit in a chieftain's seat? He often said you carried yourself with quiet nobility, madam, even when circumstances didn't reflect it. I ran my fingers over carved armrests worn smooth by time. For 42 years, David had seen me as someone extraordinary, while I saw myself as an ordinary teacher. What did he envision for me here? That you would live as lady of the manor, surrounded by beauty and history, making decisions that honored both your dignity and Ireland's past. And if I choose to return home, Everything remains yours regardless, madam. His only wish was that you have the choice. I looked at displays representing wealth and responsibility beyond comprehension. David had given me not just money, but a direct link to Ireland's ancient soul. Some men searched lifetimes for gold. Mine found it and spent 18 years building me a legacy. That evening, in the intimate dining room, I ate food grown in the manor gardens, served on china bearing the new Harrington crest David had apparently commissioned. "Donovan, whose crest is this?" "The Harrington family crest, madam. Mr. Harrington worked with heraldic authorities to establish it properly, drawing on his research into your shared ancestry and his guardianship of the O'Connell collection. David had created nobility for us." Later, I read his private journals, 4 volumes chronicling 18 years of planning, entries about acquiring adjoining lands for privacy, interviewing staff who would treat me with proper respect, installing preservation systems, noting moments when I felt overlooked at work, and how this place would finally honor my worth. The last entry, written months before his death: "Everything is ready. My health fades, but Eleanor will have what she deserves. I only wish I could see her face when she realizes she was always meant to rule here." I closed the journal, tears falling. Every detail had been chosen with me in mind. The next days brought complications. Donovan informed me Claire had been calling, worried about my prolonged absence. She'd checked the hotel I'd mentioned and found no reservation. "Claire, I'm safe," I told her when I finally called. "I'm extending my trip, exploring more deeply." "Mom, this isn't like you. Spontaneous travel? No contact? We're worried grief is affecting your decisions." I felt irritation rise. Living here had already awakened confidence my daughters apparently found alarming. "I'm capable of making my own choices, Claire." "But Mom, you're sounding different. Stronger, almost distant." Stronger. The word revealed how they saw me. Gentle, predictable, manageable. 3 days later, Sophie called, distressed. "Mom, Pearl, Claire, and I are considering official steps. Your behavior is so out of character." Out of character to want independence at 70? "Mom, please tell us where you are. Claire tracked some transactions. You rented a car, headed west. We just want you safe." They were investigating my spending. Why is that acceptable? "Because Dad died 6 months ago and now you're vanishing in Ireland. We're afraid someone is taking advantage." I contacted Ms. Whitmore. "My daughters are researching my whereabouts and transactions. They suspect something about David's estate." "Madam, your husband foresaw this. The manor and collection are in an irrevocable trust, you sole beneficiary and trustee. They have no legal claim." But emotionally? Secrets this size strain families. He hoped you'd have time to adjust before disclosure. I invited both daughters to Ireland for a conversation about David's legacy. "Mom, what legacy requires meeting in Ireland?" "The kind he planned for 18 years, and I've only just begun to understand." 2 days later, I watched their car wind up the drive. They stared at Ashford Manor in stunned silence. "Mom?" Claire called as I opened the doors. "What is this place?" "Welcome to Ashford Manor. Come in, I'll explain what your father prepared for me." Their faces mirrored my own shock from days earlier, but I saw calculation too, rapid assessment of value. "Mom, whose estate is this?" Sophie asked slowly. "Mine. Your father bought it 18 years ago as my gift. Everything here belongs to me." Silence stretched as they processed. "Mom," Claire said carefully, "this must be worth tens of millions. How did Dad afford it without us knowing?" "That's what I've been learning. He discovered something extraordinary 26 years ago." I explained the O'Connell collection, showed documents, photographs, legal papers. My God, Sophie whispered, looking at images of golden torques and illuminated pages. This belongs in the National Museum. It's more significant than much of what's there, according to your father's research. Claire studied the paperwork with accountant precision. Mom, why keep this secret for decades? He worried wealth would change us, change how you saw me, how you built your lives. But Mom, Sophie said angrily, we grew up thinking money was tight. We took loans, worked extra jobs, while you sat on hundreds of millions? Character comes from struggle, he believed, not inherited ease. Struggle, Claire's voice sharpened. I've worked 70-hour weeks, while Dad secretly maintained an Irish manner. I felt defensive of David's choices. He wanted to protect our bond from money's complications. What complications? Sophie demanded. Not worrying about bills? Choosing passion over paycheck? Donovan suggested viewing the collection. Seeing it directly might help understanding. In the vault, their awe was palpable, but so was the mental accounting. Mom, Claire said on the stairs, what happens to all this eventually? Practical planning for assets this size. Your father arranged everything. As we entered the galleries, silence fell. This is unreal, Sophie breathed. Mom, you're one of the richest women alive. Behavior shifted quickly. Over dinner, they became advisors. Mom, security protocols need review. Insurance, appraisals, tax strategy, Claire listed efficiently. Your father handled all that. But now circumstances differ. Contemporary advice could optimize everything. Sophie focused on lifestyle. Mom, you'll need wardrobe updates, social planning, event coordination. This level requires infrastructure. I've managed fine alone. But think bigger, charity events, cultural influence. I saw them imagining roles. Claire managing finances, Sophie curating image. What if I sold everything and donated proceeds? Alarm flashed. Premature, Claire said quickly. Comprehensive analysis first. And culturally tragic, Sophie added. Private stewardship allows unique flexibility. They were protecting access to future inheritance. That night, I asked Donovan about David's instructions for family pressure. He anticipated they might see the collection as financial rather than cultural responsibility. Next morning, I found them researching trusts and foundations. Mom, we've ideas for tax-efficient structures ensuring professional management across generations. Generations? Planning my estate while I'm alive? We're offering options, Claire said smoothly. I felt their assumption of authority deeply. I'm capable of my own decisions. But Mom, you lack experience at this scale. International assets, artifact law, staff oversight. We're family, Sophie added. We want to help you enjoy this while securing the future. Their help felt like control. The breaking point came days later. I overheard Claire on the phone discussing fiduciary oversight for family cultural trusts. Claire, consulting lawyers about my estate? Mom, just gathering best practice information. Assets this size need specialized handling. Without my permission. I'm trying to protect you from mistakes. That afternoon, Sophie was photographing artifacts for appraisal purposes. Sophie, did I request inventory? Current market values could inform decisions. Both acting as co-owners. That evening, I spoke with Miss Whitmore. They believe they have rights to influence decisions. Your husband prepared for this, protective disclosure documents making clear that pressure or interference results in exclusion from any future benefit. Armed with the papers, I called a family meeting. These documents establish my sole authority. Any attempt to influence my choices or treat this as shared property excludes you from future considerations. Mom, we weren't pressuring, Claire protested carefully, just offering guidance. You researched legal options without consent. You photographed my collection for undisclosed purposes. That is interference. We love you, Sophie said quietly. We want to help. If you love me, respect my autonomy. Your father feared exactly this reaction. Some mothers discover their children's love survives wealth. Others learn money reveals priorities. I was learning which described us. 6 months later, I sat in the tower study I'd made my own, watching Kerry sunsets gild the lake, reflecting on the life I'd claimed. My daughters returned home after that meeting. Communication became strained attempts at repair that always circled back to estate concerns. "Mom, maintaining a manor alone must be isolating," Claire said once. "Perhaps professional management with family oversight." "I'm not isolated. I have Donovan, staff, growing friendships with local historians and scholars. But we're your family." "I want family who see me, not my assets." Sophie's calls suggested cultural initiatives I could lead, with her coordination, of course. "I've already begun collaborations with Irish universities for research access." "But Mom, with proper structure, we could do such more." I stopped answering when conversations refused to stay personal. Living at Ashford had become joy beyond imagining. Mornings cataloging manuscripts with the librarian, afternoons corresponding with global experts, evenings hosting small gatherings of scholars discussing Gaelic history in the very halls where similar conversations once happened centuries ago. "Mrs. Harrington, your insights into the manuscripts are reshaping understanding of medieval Irish literature," a visiting professor told me recently. "Having direct access changes everything." I discovered I loved managing the estate, working with Donovan on gardens, preservation, visitor protocols. It awakened abilities I'd never explored. I've established the Harrington Heritage Foundation to eventually receive the manor and collection, ensuring preservation while removing inheritance pressure. Miss Whitmore helped structure it perfectly. Letters from Claire and Sophie arrived expressing disappointment at exclusion in governance. Neither asked about my happiness, only their lost role in Dad's legacy. This morning I wrote inviting them to visit, as daughters, not advisors. Discussions of management forever off limits. In 1983, David promised the impossible for 42 years of marriage. When I turned that silver key in Ireland, I found a lost Celtic treasure and a manor built to honor me. But the true gift wasn't gold or stone. It was discovering, at 70, the strength to choose my own sovereignty over pleasing others. At 73, I am Lady Eleanor Harrington of Ashford Manor, guardian of Ireland's ancient heart, living the life David always knew I deserved. Some women inherit titles by birth. I earned mine through 42 years of love and the courage to accept my crown when it was finally offered. The Kerry sunset tonight painted my domain in emerald and gold, reminding me daily that some promises are worth waiting a lifetime to fulfill. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over expectations, share your experience in the comments below. And if you want more stories of women finding their hidden strength, subscribe to the channel and stay with me for the next one. You're not alone.